Just wanted to come on for a bit and just talk about something that I'm not sure how much it's taught or how much it's really spoken about, but how the self reflection and sort of watching and understanding our own emotions and our own reactions affect our mediumship, and how it's really just as important to understand ourselves as it is when we start the endeavor to try to understand the spirit world. The more we can reflect on our lives and our patterns and our behaviors and our reaction, the more we can sort of understand when we're doing a mediumship reading what's us and what's spirit. And it's I do find a lot of this will start with just being able to sit with yourself in a meditation, which if you can do that, it's great, but not sitting to bring through a link or make contact, but just sitting with yourself. The more you do this, the more you get to understand your mind and how you think, and possibly also reflect a bit on how your reactions in life to people, to situations, have affected your life, and how maybe they were actually detrimental to your mental health. And by mental health, I don't mean mental, I just mean the way our brain works and the way our mind will sort of understand things that are external and how we process information. And I do know from speaking to enough mediums and working with enough people who study mediumship, a lot of us come from damaged childhoods or illnesses or adverse situations or anything that honestly it's normal that this would affect your mind and how you think, and perhaps you see yourself in a different way. And it's important to look at all of this and do this self work and self reflection and learn about yourself and learn about your patterns and to understand yourself. Because the more we can understand ourselves, as I said, the more we begin to understand what's us and what's spirit. So when you're doing a reading, if in the middle of the reading you recognize yourself and you recognize your mind and your thoughts as opposed to a spirit communicator, you can shift it and you can shift your awareness back to spirit. I don't know, without doing this self work and without sitting with yourself and your own spirit, whether you can get to that point. I'm assuming that most people will start with guided meditations and bringing the spirit world close and bringing through loved ones, and all of that's really great. But I think a step before all of that should really just be getting to know your own spirit and getting to know yourself and just sitting with yourself and thinking about how your life has gone and perhaps situations that you've been in and what have you learned, and possibly to see your life uh, as not as a challenge but as an opportunity to grow and learn and just to understand how we tick. And I know the more we can come to this understanding how we work and how we think, the easier it is to link with spirit later, and the easier it is to differentiate between us and spirit. I just got back from an amazing week at Arthur Findlay College in the UK, and one of the most respected teachers that I know was teaching the morning session, and we all were sitting in meditation for about 25 minutes. And she said, great, everyone sat really well for 20 minutes, and if you can sit well for 20 minutes, you should sit for an hour. And I know that's rather daunting for a lot of people to be able to sit for an hour just in the silence, not trying to create, not trying to bring through spirit, not connecting to spirit, just with yourself. It's a lot, but it's so important. And I do believe this was the same teacher that told me once, privately, that when she started her development circle, they sat for 3 years just with a candle lit, not pulling contacts, not looking for physical activity, just sitting and being and learning to be quiet. Quiet with your body, still, and learning to still your mind and quiet your mind. There's a lot of meditations that I've listened to, and I sort of laughed. Said, clear your mind of any thoughts, quiet your mind. You cannot have a completely quiet mind, you would be dead, but you can learn how to not give energy to thoughts as they come through your mind. So just acknowledge the thought, let it go, and as the next thought comes, try to pull that energy back to just being still. And slowly but surely, the thoughts will start to fade and become lighter and less dense. And the more you can do that, the more you can open yourself up and just become a clear and pure and still channel for spirit communication. I do think also if we can sit with ourselves and learn about ourselves and understand ourselves more through sitting in the silence, that we just give spirit the best opportunity possible to use us. And we can be of service to spirit way better than with an active mind or perhaps being a bit reactive with our emotions or our beliefs. And you have to understand, why am I reacting in this situation as I am, and what is this, and why do I get angry when someone can't take this piece of evidence? Is this my ego? Is this something from childhood of not being seen or heard? Or is this me just wanting to be right? So you have to really understand that pure spirit communication, I feel, and evidence that we bring through, however you bring it through, whatever Claire or Claire's that you are dominant at the moment with, that information eventually, once you get to know yourself, that tastes differently, I find, or sounds differently than information coming from your mind. So if you're giving a reading and a piece of information comes through that just doesn't feel right, you need to pause for like a millisecond and say, was that my mind, or is that evidence coming through from spirit? And just shift it and shift your awareness back to spirit. But until you know the difference between what you're not, I don't want to say making up, but what information is coming from your mind, if you try to sort of make sense of the information coming through, and our own knowledge of the world will try to interpret it, and what is just pure spirit communication. Once you learn how your mind works and what your mind sounds like, or what your thoughts taste like or feel like, you'll begin to gauge the success of a reading. So you always have to keep track of this, and you always will have to adjust and see. You can give five pieces of evidence and quickly in your head just run back over it. What didn't feel right here? What was given to me, and did I interpret this incorrectly, or did I just create my own story from this evidence in my mind, and I'm just trying to make sense of it? I think once you start thinking, I need to make sense of this information and evidence, your mind kicks on. And it's a subtle shift to get back to just the spirit link, but you need to, because otherwise you're going to just start speaking from your mind. And probably after a little while, I think you either just make it up in your head, or you pull in psychic. So you have to really understand what feels like spirit and what feels like you. And the you part needs to decrease over time. So it's at the end of the day, it's not really you, and we're just a pure and clear channel for the spirit communicator that has chosen to work with us and wants to speak with their loved one in front of us in a sitting, or their loved one in a congregation in a demonstration situation. I was asked the other day about, well, how do I meditate? How do I start with visualizations? Do I do a guided meditation, music, no music, silence? I think I started by guided meditations, which was a nice way to just begin because it just, the guide guides you into it, obviously. But the more I was able to sit with myself just quietly, I went on to just light ambient music, then maybe crystal bowl music or wind chimes, nature sounds, things like that, to the point now where I prefer just to sit in the silence. And I try to make a daily practice of at least 45 minutes, 1 hour on a good day, 20 minutes on a bad day. But I try to do this every day. It just makes my mind more stable, I find, and calmer. And I'm just more relaxed. And I find the more relaxed you can be, once you start doing readings in practice situations or professionally, the more relaxed you are, the better the reading will be because the stress is gone. I think we're always a bit nervous, and that's good because you want to serve spirit in the best way possible, and be of service to spirit. But being anxious or being tense, that just blocks the flow. And you need to learn how to sort of harness this nervousness and pull it back into the power that you should be in when you're linking with spirit. In the beginning, I won't really ask people to sit with the purpose of pulling a spirit link or the presence of spirit. I think it's more important just to sit with yourself and your own soul, your own spirit, and get to know yourself and just contemplate your life and go through, why do I get angry at these situations? What resentment or anger am I hanging on to? What love can I send out there into the world to people who have hurt me? And that's the hardest thing to do. But I do think just starting at that level is very important for our foundation, and just helps us in the long run with our mediumship as we move forward. I think probably about 3 or 4 months into my development, I started to spit. I started to spit. Great. I started to sit for bringing the spirit world closer, just to sit in the presence of spirit and just to feel them coming closer and starting to learn what the energy feels like as spirit draws near. There is a subtle energy shift I find in the atmosphere when spirit draws near, and I think it's really important to know. A one-on-one sitting, you need to know when spirit come close. In a demonstration, you need to know when spirit comes close. To me, the electricity changes in the air, and I think it's really important to understand that. I do know that this transference of energy that goes on when you have spirit near is important, and I sort of equate it to, if you're with someone who is just upbeat and happy, not annoyingly happy or sweet and saccharine, but like you feel good. So when you leave them, like, wow, I'm really in a good mood. And I think this also happens with spirit. There's a transferring of energy going back and forth when you have spirit coming close. And I do think that this is also important because you get to know spirit and their energy, and they get to know you. So they need to know how you work. They need to know how you think. They need to know how you are as a person, and they will work differently with you as they will with me or as they will with anyone else. So I really am going to go forward into next year really emphasizing this point that you need to get to know yourself before you should even start trying to get to know spirit or how they communicate with us, and how to become the best tool possible for them to bring their evidence forward into the physical world. At the end of the day, we are the voice for the voiceless, and I really do think we give them the best service and the most respect when we keep this channel, this mechanism, which is our body, and our mind, our physical mind, as clear and pure as possible.